Asia, the world's fastest growing region, accounts for half the world's emissions. Asia has lagged behind in efforts to decarbonize, but now those efforts are picking up speed.
We have a huge population, and we used to emit quite a lot of CO2, and we're still emit quite a lot. But at least from the policy perspective, right, we have the idea, we have the vision, and government invests a lot on the research and the development. That will, in the next couple of years, rapidly transform the overall setting to reduce the CO2 in the air.
We need to be extraordinarily fast in the way we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, restructure our energy, our transport systems, our built environment, the way we use food and agriculture. We can do it, but it requires our best efforts.
Asia is the fastest growing region in the world, but that growth has come with a price. Carbon emissions are warming the planet. Now, Asia and the world are in a race to decarbonize, to accelerate a renewable energy transition, to slash emissions from transportation, and to have capital catalyze innovations and action across the globe. The race to get to net zero by 2050 has begun. Ambitious targets have been set to mitigate climate change. But the vision of a net zero world is an expensive one to realize. In 2019, it was estimated that $131 trillion would be needed through to 2050, just on spending to achieve a renewable energy transition. Governments can't do it alone, so private capital is stepping up. The Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, or GFANZ, is a coalition of leading financial institutions around the world. Their mission? To accelerate the transition to a net zero economy. Harry Cho is a steering committee member of GFANZ.
GFANZ represents the shared ambition and implementation towards net zero of financial institutions that have committed across the whole of financial sector. If the private sector does not enable that need for massive reallocation of capital, which requires reconfiguring of decision-making in strategic asset allocation for asset owners, banks, asset managers, insurers, and the financial service providers, what we will be facing is a world that is not going to be, on average, net zero by 2050.
GFANZ has a membership of more than 450 banks, insurers, and asset managers across 45 countries. It promises to deliver up to $100 trillion to help economies transition to net zero over the next 3 decades.
Well, the net zero movement also brings some of the biggest commercial opportunities of our lifetime. 80% of the world GDP is already committed to net zero pathway. And it is estimated about 100 to 150 trillion will be needed over the next 3 decades. The financial institutions who get this and aligning their pathways to net zero are going to be able to capture some of these biggest opportunities that's going to be coming up.
HSBC is a founding member of the Net Zero Banking Alliance, which is a member alliance of GFANZ. In 2021, the bank was named Best Bank by Euromoney for sustainable finance in Asia, the Middle East, and Western Europe.
The urgency is great. It's now or never, they say. It's therefore important actually to now garner capital to support basically a more sustainable future. And this capital usage will be used for green technology development in terms of helping build infrastructure to support this. HSBC has done a plethora of green bonds, sustainably linked bonds with our customers. In a recent example that we did, where HSBC financed a local Singapore company to supply batteries. And what we did was to provide green trade financing for a company called Power. So Power imports lithium-ion batteries in support of electric vehicles to be operated in the Tuas Mega Port. And we have incentivized trade financing for Power, and it's a win-win situation where Power can supply electrification of vehicles in the port and to also make the Tuas port more green.
Other investment companies in Singapore are also spending big on sustainability. Temasek actively shapes its portfolio to achieve long-term sustainable returns and impact. That includes providing capital to companies developing new sustainable technologies that contribute towards decarbonisation goals.
Financial institutions, I would say that they were late adopters on climate, but now financial institutions have really woken up. How do we finance the energy transition? How do you help use all of the banking relationships we have to make sure you're working with your clients to finance and support things that are aligned with tackling climate change?
A cleaner, greener future looks possible with a combination of catalytic capital and the carrots and sticks of economic policy. In 2019, Singapore became the first Southeast Asian country to impose a carbon tax. The tax rate will be progressively increased, reaching $45 per tonne in 2026 and between $50 to $80 per tonne by 2030. This is with the aim of helping Singapore move decisively on new goals to achieve net zero emissions by the middle of the century.
I'm a strong believer in the need for carbon tax, and that's why we've seen that pretty much every country around the world has been putting in place carbon taxes. They vary a lot, all the way from like $1 and all the way up to $100 plus in some countries. So I think it's a firmly important part of the solution here. But if we really want to get to an optimal solution for the world, it isn't a complete solution. It's not an optimal solution.
That's because while carbon taxes compel many firms to decarbonize, some firms can't do it right away. Maybe they don't have the means, or the technology isn't ready yet. What they can do instead is offset their emissions. A business offsets its residual carbon emissions by paying for the removal or reduction of emissions somewhere else, performed by somebody else. They can pump funds into equipment such as more energy-efficient cook stoves that reduce deforestation for firewood and improve local livelihoods. They could also help to restore tropical forests that sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
And it sounds a bit like you're letting polluters off the hook, but you're actually allowing the best opportunities to be pursued fastest, because the atmosphere doesn't care where a ton of CO2 comes from. It basically blends into the total atmosphere and we cause the entire planet to warm. So if you can reduce carbon emissions fastest where it's easiest, then that's a fantastic opportunity. So carbon markets can make this happen so much quicker and so much cheaper.
Carbon marketplaces and exchanges enable firms to purchase high-quality credits as carbon offsets. There is one such company in Singapore. Climate Impact X was launched in 2021, with the goal of helping to scale the voluntary carbon market with transparency, integrity, and trust, and help position Singapore as a hub for carbon-related services.
Singapore has a wonderful track record as being what I would call an unbiased broker. It means that Singapore doesn't have a lot of carbon credits that it can offer to the world. But on the other hand, although we have a carbon footprint, it's also not very large. So in a way, we don't have a vested interest in one side of this equation. So we can become an unbiased broker between countries who have carbon credits and those who need them. And Singapore has done that with success before. If you think about how we dealt with iron ore, Singapore doesn't produce much iron ore and we don't use much iron ore, but still we're the global hub for iron ore. And some of the things that works really well for Singapore is it's just a trusted place to operate. People believe in our rule of law, They know we can make things happen. People understand the transparency in this country here. And of course, we have the skilled labor force here as well. So all these things mean that we naturally have become a financial center of the world, and I think we can be very, very proud of that. And it's exactly the same reason that I think will put us in good standing for the carbon market.
Another platform has a broader set of objectives. Gen Zero, established by Temasek, seeks to catalyze, grow, and operationalize climate solutions to create impact at scale.
This new platform company will invest in and catalyze new transformational decarbonisation solutions. Secondly, they will invest in carbon credit generating projects. And thirdly, they will invest into the broader carbon ecosystem to be able to enable decarbonisation solutions to be introduced at scale. Even as we invest into maybe nature-based projects that can actually yield carbon credits, we are also going to be developing a marketplace where those credits can be sold in a price-transparent, high-trust way. We're also investing into project developers and consultants that will help us to be able to manage the project development of these carbon credit generating projects, and also investing into what we call MRV, or monitoring, reporting, and verification companies that will help us to be able to build trust and ensure that the quality of the carbon credits are maintained throughout the lifetime of those projects.
Carbon credits help businesses and economies achieve some level of decarbonisation right away. But it would take a lot more capital to fund innovations urgently needed to really move the needle on climate change.
To reach net carbon zero by 2050 or sooner, we need to invest $4.5 trillion per year, every year, from now until 2050. There's a 60% gap in where those investment dollars are coming from and where they're going.
Megan Sharp is the global head of Decarbonisation Partners, a partnership between BlackRock and Temasek. It is a private capital investor that supports a new generation of technologies that will help get the world to net zero by 2050.
The most exciting investments that we're seeing are in sectors like carbon capture, utilization and storage, carbon management, bio and low carbon products, low carbon and renewable energy, advanced mobility, as well as the digital transformation that underlies all of this.
Decarbonisation Partners has also made some investments on future materials.
And we're looking at one opportunity in the synthetic materials space. It's an alternative leather. It's a plant-based leather made out of mushrooms. Leather is a very carbon-intensive product, and consumers are demanding a more sustainable alternative. And a lot of consumer product brands have their own net carbon zero goals that they're trying to deliver.
It's more urgent than ever to mitigate climate change. But new streams of capital offer hope that efforts to decarbonize will pick up greater speed.
I'd say hope is also a renewable resource, because the future is going to be a revolution in how we produce things, how we feed ourselves, how we transport ourselves and each other, and how the energy systems are, and we can all play our part. So I think we've never had so much human potential for change, so many people that are educated, so much awareness. Human potential is at an all-time high. So if we unlock that together, then we will surprise and delight ourselves.
This program is produced in partnership with Temasek's Ecosperity platform.